It's Wink, Blink, and Flirt, and we are here. And as always, I'm fidgeting. Okay. Um, this is the panel of Girl By on a very rainy Memorial Day. I'm happy and excited that everyone's here. I have Lola Troy with us today. Vanessa Campbell is joining us for our first time, as well as Katrina Harrington Spencer. Tonight's topic is going to be about mothers and daughters. And for the event, I dressed kind of similar to how my mother would dress as she was going out. This, in fact, is my mother's little ponytail thinger, right? I figured I'd kind of do it in honor of mom. And my mom was an AKA who was my, um, how do I say this? My soror, and I had the distinct pleasure of being made by my mother. So that's, for me, this whole kind of ties together. I want to ask you guys as we start to talk about mothers and daughters, and by the way, happy Mother's Day to um, all of you. In case I missed you and didn't wish you happy Mother's Day. Just starting out, what do you remember? What's your most fond memory of your mom? Anyone jump in? Katrina?
Hmm. I can tell you a recent memory,
Okay. Or
something that
even
just
thinking
recently
childhood.
happened. I think the thing about my mom that I can think of is that my mom was like the cool mom, right?
Okay.
So my mom did not believe in letting us spend the night at people's houses,
Oh, really?
but no, she didn't. No. But that meant our house was the place to be. So our friends were always over. Everybody knew my mom. It was always, hey, Miss Jones, hey, Miss Jones. And we would joke that people outside the house liked our mom more than we did because, you know, because she was the cool mom. And so I'll give you guys two things. One is an old memory. Growing up, my mom used to keep a bowl of condoms on the coffee table,
Wow. Oh,
right?
gee.
Yeah. And she would tell our friends, she say, look, I know you're doing it. But if you're thinking
Mm-mm.
about doing it, you want to do it, no questions asked. Before you walk out the door, just grab some, right?
Wow.
And so, yeah, so the kids would come to the house sometimes, not really to see us, just because they wanted free condoms, right?
Ah,
And then most recently, my daughter had her graduation party, and my mom decided she was going to give her cash for a gift. And so, when it was her turn to give her her gift, we were taking pictures with friends, and my mom comes out with this stack of cash, and she's just
ah,
like, she's
not the money gun.
oh gosh, it cracked me up so badly because also she did it so poorly. So I was like, clearly she's never done this at the strip club before. But it was just like a cute, thing that is an example of who my mom is.
I love that.
Yeah.
Lola, how about you?
Oh boy. So my mom was the exact opposite. Katrina. My mom wasn't the cool mom. My mom, however, was an educator. So um a lot about my mom, a lot that I get from my mom, my organization, what I learned about her was her grace and her elegance. My mom is a very graceful woman. Like she's your soror, but
Hmm.
she's also super graceful. Like always appropriate, always graceful, and she surrounded herself with other women that were just as graceful and just
Oh,
as
wow.
elegant.
Mhm.
Like, a real lady. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? Like you don't really see a lot of ladies nowadays.
True.
And her crew, they were all like that, very educated, very enterprising, all of them did a lot of stuff in the community. Um and so I looked up to them. I wanted to be just like them. I wanted to, have my crew of women that, were elegant and being graceful. I'm not as graceful and elegant as she. I strive to be. But yeah, she's a really kind person. And not nice, because there's a difference in nice and kind, right?
Hmm.
Mhm.
My mom is a real kind person. Like She's the person that's going to give you the shirt off her back. She's the person that's going to be the last person to leave in a vid. She's going to make sure that everybody is okay. So those are the things that I remember about my mom the most, that I love about her, and what I try to emulate.
Vanessa, what about you?
Um, I guess my mom was a little bit of both of you guys' moms. Um, she lived until she was 90 years old.
Wow.
And at 80 years old, we gave her a birthday party, and it was the decades of her life. So when she was born, her mother died in childbirth,
Mm.
and so we had someone to sing. Sometimes I feel like a motherless child,
Oh,
and that was in the 1920s. And in the 1930s, because of the Great Depression, we had someone sing a song, Precious Lord, Take My Hand. And in the 30s, or the 40s, she graduated from high school. The 50s, she got married. So my sister and my brother, my sister wore her original wedding gown, and my brother acted as my father, and we did a wedding thing. In the 60s, we moved out of the projects into a single family home, so we had the people in the single family home talk about them. And in the 70s, what was it like to grow up with teenagers in the house? So we had different friends and everything. In the 80s, the grandchildren and the great grandchildren were born. The 90s, my father passed away, and so we had someone sing different medleys from his choir. And then in 2000, we just laid flowers at her feet, just
oh
trying to
wow.
give her
Her flowers now.
her flowers while she was living.
Yeah.
And even though she told us that her mother died in childbirth, through ancestry.com, we found out that her mother did not die in childbirth, but gave her up for adoption.
Oh.
And it was 100-year closed adoption, which we weren't able to find out who her my maternal grandmother was until this year,
Oh.
legally. So we found out through ancestry.com, but we still waiting for the courts to tell us, who she was. But she wanted to find out who she was before she died. I had contacted Oprah and all of those people, but we weren't able to find that out. And so the last thing that she said to me when she died, before she died, was like, I guess I'll never find out who I am.
Oh.
Mm.
So it's been on my
Mm.
heart to find out who she is. We have found out who her mother was,
Mm.
and have engaged with my first cousins.
Interesting.
But she wasn't able to find that out.
It seems like your mom was very open to communicating what she wanted, what she needed, and she kind of inspired that to you. I,
Hmm.
I want to know from you ladies, how would you describe the relationship dynamics that you've had with your mom as a child
Mm.
and as a teen? How is that evolution?
Well, my mom was not affectionate. So
Really?
she wasn't like I am with my son and daughter, the huggy, give me a kiss, I love you type of thing. She never verbally said, I love you, but she did acts of kindness and things to portray that. Um, and I don't know if it was because she didn't feel that or didn't have that as she grew up and being adopted, but she was not an affectionate person. So it wasn't until she got in her 80s that I would hug her and I would kiss her, and because she just didn't demonstrate that as I grew up.
Lola, how about you?
Mine's a little bit different. When you were talking about your mom, my mother, when I was born in 1973. And so my mom's 84, and they're from that Great Depression silent generation. They weren't super duper affectionate. It was more about, getting your schoolwork done, making sure that you were doing your extracurricular activities and being astute and being a great student. That was very much so the mindset of my mom as an educator. But I want to go back to her birthing story. When my mom had me, my mom almost died.
Oh,
Mm.
I'm my parents' youngest child, and my mom had fibroids, and she had gotten in a wreck when she was pregnant with me. And when she went into labor, her fibroid, of course, she started internally bleeding. And so they took me out, but my mom literally died. My dad had to go around to like different um churches and barber shops and stuff because they didn't have like what we have now, the Red Cross, for
yeah.
people to donate blood. But he
Yeah.
was going around to different places, schools,
Wow.
and asking people to donate blood. And so my bond was with my grandmother. My mom was still in the hospital, and my grandmother kind of did the infant time with me because my mom wasn't able to. And then right after my mom got out of the hospital, my brother got deathly ill and was in the hospital for like 6 to 9 months, where he almost died. So I never got to bond with my mom.
Mm.
Wow.
I never got
So,
to bond with her. And so my mothering came from my grandmother. And my relationship with my mom is a lot better now, but she was just from that generation where they weren't super duper affectionate. There was so much going on in the family, and my relationship with her now is a little bit different than it was back then. It wasn't that she was a bad mom or she wasn't a or a participating mom. She just had life going on. As you know, as mothers, you know how things happen. You got to focus on, like, if you got a sick child that's about to die, that's your focus.
Right.
yeah, yeah.
You know what I mean? So everybody just kind of surrounded her and my dad with the support that they needed with the rest of us while they were taking care of my brother in the hospital.
Mm.
Katrina, what about you?
My relationship with my mom,
Yeah.
um, I don't know. Like I remember being
Growing.
young, and my mom was kind of like my world, And I mean, when I say young, I mean like a little kid. I'm the baby in my family, so
That's interesting.
it was very much like, oh, my mom. But I think that around like the time that I became a teenager and I was kind of doing my own thing, my relationship with my mother changed a lot. And it was one of those things that never really bounced, it never really pulled back, to the way that it was when I was younger. Um, I think that so first of all, my mother was a single mom. So
Hmm.
by the time I came along, my father died when I was 4 months old, and so there was my mom and three kids, and the
Yeah.
last one, her father was gone. So she was, just kind of living as best she could. And I know I remember by the time I was in my teens, I remember making a direct correlation between the fact that my father was not there and the relationship that I had with my mom. Because though my brother and my sister, their fathers were deadbeats, my father was actually dead. So there was this there was this difference because I think she didn't have the opportunity to like mourn. She didn't have the opportunity to be mad at him for things that she should have been mad at him for. But at the same time, she was getting a regular check from
Mm.
him. So I
Okay.
think she was kind of in this kind of duplicitous state, and I felt that directly. Then also, my mother, she was going back to school, then she went back to work. So I was kind of doing my own thing for a large portion, and then I got to a point where I was like, "What you asking me questions for, lady? I got this." You know, I'm going out. I'll be back. You know what I'm saying? Of course, that wasn't flying, but that was also just kind of like the part of growing up too, right? Where you just get into, as they say, smelling yourself or whatever. Um, it's literally just recently, my 45th birthday. I took a trip to Tulum, and my sister invited herself, and then she
Good.
invited my mom. So it became our first girls' trip, right? My
Okay.
mother, my sister, and I. And here, though I'm trying to go and have fun and experience a new place, we ended up the very first night there having this very serious and very emotional conversation
Wow.
about her as a parent and our relationship, and just really kind of uncovering some really deep things that I personally probably would have never talked to her about, because I had found a way to live with it. Do you know what I mean? Where
Mhm.
it's like,
Mhm. Mhm.
but I got this. So it's a very interesting question. I think my mom and I have a very deep connection. I think, but it's still one that it's kind of, I think, where if there had not been negative thoughts and feelings behind it, it would have come across as a mutual respect for the women that we are. um and though that is the case, I think that it was born out of feelings of not being considered, and maybe not even being loved in ways, and you know so like where Lola or Vanessa can say, like, my mom never told me, I love you. So that was something that you learned how to, deal with. You were able to see your mom's love in different ways, right? But my mom was an affectionate person, and she did say she loved us, and she did do things. So for me, I was always comparing her love for me to her love for my siblings, you
Wow.
know. So, and I could always see the difference. So, it was a very different thing. But I love my mom very much. I have a lot of respect for her, and I know she loves me too. But it's just a different type of scenario.
That's interesting. You guys are just kind of in full circle, have different kind of experiences. Um, my mom was very. My mom was the child whose parents weren't as demonstrative. So as a result of that, she was extremely demonstrative with us. She was always hugging and kissing and touching. So, um, and so that was kind of her love language too. So that becomes, um, and I'm going to apologize up front. So if I get a little kind of misty, you know where I am in a little bit. But that was. Her thing. She made sure that we were loved on and hugged on and all that jazz. Um, as you think about the the way your mom was and the course of the relationship, as you kind of get into that teen stage, I'm right now. I'm looking at our relationships as daughters to mothers, and I don't know about you guys, but I know with my mom put a line in the sand very early on, and I don't know if you guys had the same experience. She said to me, I am your best friend. There is not going to be another person who's going to be your best friend the way I am. No one's going to the mat for you. So don't think those little people at school take precedence over being your friend the way I am. And that made me look at her in a different kind of way. And it made me, like, I know, Katrina, you're very much that kind of best friend kind of relationship with your kids. And I know, Lola, you have a very close relationship with your daughter. And for me, I wonder, and Vanessa, I don't know how your relationship is with your kids in that regard, but I'm wondering, did you guys ever have that kind of conversation in the kitchen where you said to your kids, I am the backstop. I'm the catcher. I'm giving you the signals. I'm going to tell you how to call it. I'm going to be that person for you. Was that ever a thing for you guys?
It was definitely, and it was a conscious conversation. I went into, when I became a mom to my daughter, I went into it saying, I want to have a relationship with my daughter where she can come to me and talk to me about anything, because I didn't have that relationship with my mom. My mom was very corrective. Um, and that was just how she was raised. You know what I mean? With her being an educator, it was all about crossing the T's, dotting the I's, making sure that you're a good student, like I was stating before. So I remember in therapy, my therapist asked me, she was like, normally when you have both parents in the household, you have like a critical parent and a nurturing parent, right? She said, so which one did you have? I said, well, both of my parents were critical. I didn't have a nurturing parent. Like, I didn't have that experience where my mom, like, I knew that I was loved. I felt deeply loved by my parents, but I also felt very judged by my parents. Like,
Mm.
it was a thing about how I was to act in public and how I was supposed to act at home. And there were certain rules that I had to abide by. And I thought that everybody's household was like that. And then when you get in school and you realize, especially like middle school, high school, you're like, wow, my friends, their house is jumping. Like they got the fun house. Like, I don't want to. No, I'm not inviting y'all to my house. Well, y'all can't come to my house, no way. But
But if
I
you
want to go to
could,
somebody else's house.
right.
I don't want to be at my house because I was. It was a real. It was a big defining moment for me. So I went into becoming a parent thinking, like, I want my daughter to be able to come to me and talk to me about anything. And I expressed that when she got of age, especially when she got in middle school where she really could understand. I wanted her to know that there was nothing that she could say, nothing that she could do that would deter me from loving her and being by her side and holding her hand through any situation. Like, I'm going to be your biggest supporter. I'm going to make sure I'm going to be your biggest protector. I'm the person that you come to about whatever questions you have. And my daughter and I, we talk very, very candid with one another. And I didn't have that growing up. So I went into motherhood consciously wanting to cultivate that with my daughter.
Vanessa, how about you?
Let me get off this porch.
I see you being beat up by
Wind
that.
is getting you.
I did not have, my mother was not my best friend, and she let me know that she was not my best friend and was not going to be my best friend.
Really?
And so I remember running away from home at 10 and getting hit by a car.
Oh my God.
And, and at 14,
Vanessa, can't hear you.
let's see. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yes, much better.
Okay. And I remember between 14 and 18 were the worst years of my life.
Wow.
And
Why?
I couldn't go anywhere. I always was being accused of having sex, and I wasn't even having sex. It was not a very good time for me.
Can I
And
ask you a question?
uh-huh.
What's the age gap between you and your mom?
30 years.
Yeah, that makes sense. My mom was 33 when she had me. So that makes
Well,
sense.
yeah.
Oh, so your
And
mom felt that way too, Lola? Your mom was
Very much so. It's such a gap in the age and the time period of when they were growing up and what was
okay.
going on with them and how they raised kids at that age. It was just very different.
Okay. I was going to say that's interesting. Thinking about older mothers with daughters versus younger mothers with daughters. Let's touch on that for a second.
Yeah.
Is there anyone here was a younger mother?
Me?
Okay. Do you think that your relationship with your kids would be different if you had them in the last 5 years or the last 10 years?
Yeah, because I wouldn't have had no kids in the last 5 or 10 years because they got bigger booty.
Can't hear you well.
I say yeah, because I wouldn't have had any kids in the last 5 or 10 years.
Why?
Um, no, that would have been me 35 giving birth, and that's for some people to do. It's just not for me to do. So I have no desire at that age to be raising or breastfeeding or anything like that. But I did want to answer the last question though that you asked. Because I wanted to say, I think that on the outside looking in, people do think I have very much like a friendly relationship with my kids,
Mm-hmm.
but I have absolutely told them I am not their friend.
Mm.
Um, I'm their mama. I just think that mother and child relationships can look very different. For me, my goal was not to possess my children. I don't think of them as mine. I
Mm-hmm.
think that God has tasked me with the care and keeping of these individuals. I
Mm-hmm.
don't really see them as like they belong to me. So I don't impress anything upon them from the perspective of, making them feel like I'm trying to push them in any corner, make them be anything, share my beliefs. I think of
Really?
it more like, let me plant this seed in fertile ground and let me nurture it and let me water it and let them know that there is nothing you can do aside from murdering somebody or stealing something. And even in both of those cases, they're still like we can talk about it. Never gonna not love them, never gonna disown them, will always be there for them. But I think of it more like what you need. Let me be. I'll give you a case in point. Just today, my kid asked me about smoking weed,
Daughter?
and no, one of my son
Okay.
asked me about smoking weed, and I had already known about it. This thing is bothering me, but I had already known about it because his sister told me because they have that kind of relationship amongst each other and they check in with each other first and then they get advised, hey, talk to mom, tell mom this, dot, which is what happened. But they also tell me. So it's like, hey, I want you to know he's thinking dot. Here's what we talked about. But then, my kids are open. They talk to me about stuff, but it's
Mm-hmm.
because I've developed that friendship. So, like I said, on the outside looking in, it may seem like, oh, she raises her kids like they're friends. My kids know very well that I will start it and end it,
Yeah.
you know, but I want them to come. I mean, and Vanessa has seen me interact with my children
Mhm,
before,
mhm.
I just want them to know they can come to me. And I truly feel like as a parent, my perspective is that God gives us parents to be a tangible example of his love.
Mm.
So that's what I try to be for my kids. I try to be the God that they can see, feel, touch, an example of what God's love is like. So I think that's why it comes off seeming like, oh, she's the cool mom or she's this. Because I was a kid too. You know what I'm saying, Vanessa? I was, would run
Mhm,
away and
mhm,
drink and all of those things. So I never make my kids feel like they're being judged by me,
mhm.
Yeah.
you know? And I don't really think that has anything to do with my age. To be completely honest, I think that's because of my relationship with God.
Yeah.
Mm.
Mhm,
Yeah.
Okay. All right now.
mhm.
All right. Thank you. I appreciate that. I want to kind of pivot and I want to, before I start talking about your kids or your daughters, um, I want to kind of tap a little bit more about some of the relationships that we as women have with our mothers. So, question to that is, teenager, you have a way that your mother communicates with you. I have this one memory of my mom, like having been up here in Boston my freshman year and coming back home. And I was in my bedroom, and my mother came in the bedroom. I was fiddling around doing something. And she said, I don't like the way this room looks. And I went, and she went, psh. And I was like, why'd you hit me? I said, I didn't do anything. I said, I didn't say anything. She goes, I didn't like the way you were breathing. I was like, and I said, Mom, I was like, oh, she's crazy.
You
She
don't
said,
learn.
she's crazy. She said, fix your face.
Mhm.
I was like, and I think about that to thinking about a number of years later when my mom was in a wheelchair and how we communicated differently, um, and how conflict was less one-sided. I'm interested in how you ladies handle conflict with your moms. I know the last conflict my mom and I had, it was two women shouting, and I grabbed my coat and walked out the door before I said something to my mother that I could never take back, walk back, whatever. What is it? How are you guys dealing with conflict with your mother now, if at all?
I would say my mom's 84,
That's a
and
tough age.
it's a very tough age. And honestly, and I'm 51, and I would say that my mom and I don't really handle conflict well. Like when I bring things up, my mom is very avoidant of things. She doesn't really want to talk about it. My mom is she has this great ability to see things from the lens of life is fine, life is great.
Mm,
No
mm,
matter what's going on, life is great.
mm,
And I'm the person that I don't really deal in the gray area. Like
mm.
in certain most in serious scenarios, it's black and white for me. Like this is what it is, this is the truth, and I'm a troubleshooter, so I want to get to the bottom of it. Not so much my mom. So that has been a hard journey as an adult
So does
to
she
kind of,
avoid your questions entirely?
yeah, she's avoidant of talking about anything, or she doesn't want to discuss things. I guess it's hard conversations for her. You know,
Uh-huh.
they're just hard conversations.
Interesting.
I don't know if it's because I've told her about things that I felt like she hasn't done or said that were in the best interest of me, or things that she might have done in the best interest of me or my daughter. And yeah, she doesn't want to, she might acknowledge it if she feels the need, if I like press it, but she's very avoidant. But she's
Interesting.
just from that generation. She's from the silent generation.
All right.
So
So
I find it very difficult in my adulthood to talk to her about stuff.
interesting. Vanessa, how about you? And I
So,
want to ask you
mhm.
on both sides. With your mom, it seemed like your mom was very absolute, if I have the right image of your mom. There
Mhm.
was like that old school, you're the child, I'm the adult. Children should be seen and not heard type of vein of
Oh
things.
yeah.
Um, how did you take that experience when you became a mom?
Um, so I still
Same?
kind of sort of like. However, I'm a boy mom, and but my son could always come to me and talk about anything. Sometimes it was like, oh, I don't want to hear it. It's TMI, especially when he lost his virginity. It was coming to, I don't want to hear it. But he even when I married my husband, Tony, he used to, lay down at the bottom of my bed and stuff before I got married. And then he still expected to do that once I got married. And I had to tell him, uh, this is my husband now. You can't mess this up. You're going to get married and go on about your business. So you need to get out my room. you know. So it was that type of thing. But even though I was not his friend, I worked my schedule around him. I relived his high school days, my high school days through him, through his college. I was always support, even up to the point where he in his police days.
Oh.
Um, my mother, on the other hand, was when she got older, she was very quiet. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't get excited about things. I would be spazzed out, and then she would just be in a calming voice. I'm saying, "Don't you see I'm being hysterical right now?" And she would just, assure me that it was going to be all right, that God was going to work that thing out. So she was very different once she got in her 70s and 80s.
So the time gave her wisdom and
Yes.
greater calm, I
And
guess,
patience,
and
I guess.
patience. So,
And even though I was the firstborn and I guess the most difficult in raising, I was the point of contact that my parents came to in their latter years.
it's interesting. So, with that said, I'm going to ask you ladies, how are you more or less like your mom?
I think I think I'm a lot like my mom, honestly. I think that
In
I,
total, the good and the bad?
oh sure. Sure.
Oh.
The good and the bad. I think, I'm definitely, I mean, I'm not handing out condoms, but I mean,
You're
but
slipping.
yeah, I'm some man, not quite as cool as my mom, but I definitely, the kids know they can come over here. They know that they can talk to me. Most of my kids' friends, they're close friends. I am close to their mothers. So they know they can talk to me about things they might not talk to their mom about. Now, I'd still talk to their mom, but it's easier
Mhm.
maybe for them to talk to me, and that sort of thing. I think that the main difference between my mom and I is that I try my best to be aware of my shortcomings,
Mm.
and so I try to be able to speak to those. You know what I mean? I was telling you, I think that I'm very sarcastic. I am
Mhm.
very sarcastic, and I tell people like, "Oh, I got a household full of assholes." Like you never know what's gonna come out of anybody's mouth on any particular day, except my husband. My husband says he's a dick. We have some assholes, but yeah, but I mean, everybody is just incredibly, I always use the example of when my daughter was 8, my mid kid, when she was 8, she said something to me, and I said, "Oh, you suck." And she said, with no hesitation, she didn't miss a beat. She said, "You swallow," and I said, "Well, hold on now, god darn minute." But this is, kind of how we are, right? But I just learned recently, now that I think about it, this has been a very eye-opening year. I just learned that I was hurting my children's feelings, being sarcastic and poking fun at them and making jokes. That's how we have always been. They've learned it from me, and they're quick, they're fast. I mean, those words can cut, right? So because they were doing it too, it never occurred to me that I was actually hurting their feelings. And
Interesting.
then they said that to me one day, and I cried, because I was just like, oh my God, like I would have never been hurting you knowingly, right?
Mm-hmm.
So,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that my mom, not in a sarcasm way, but just in the way of her getting through her life and doing her movements, she hurt me a lot too, you
Wow.
know? But the difference was, I think that I've at least made space for my kids that they have eventually at some point felt comfortable enough to say, "Hey lady, stop saying that stuff, it's hurtful." And I would have never said that to my mom.
Vanessa, what about you?
Um, Repeat the question again.
I just
I was
say,
You-
listening to Kat because I
yeah,
remember
uh,
taking those walks with you while you talking to your kids on the
mhm,
phone, and now they grown up.
man,
yeah,
like, glad you're going to
yeah,
college for real.
yeah, going
Um,
to
I
college.
was saying, what ways, for example, like your mom dealt with things in one way, and then you've kind of taken what you have. How has that impacted? I'm going to rephrase it. How has that impacted how you parent today? Are you
Well,
more like your mom or less like your mom?
I guess more so like my mom. You know, everybody's gone now. I'm more like her because she really was a great grandparent, and so I follow those steps. Kind of go out my way,
Mm-hmm.
for my grandchildren.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
As a mom, were you like your mom?
uh, nah.
Ah,
I mean, even being 70 years old, and my mother didn't do the things that I do. You know,
okay.
she and no, and I would not I'm not obligated to take care of your kids. And where she may have felt a sense of being able to do that, but I have my life, and I know how to put boundaries on it, and if I'm available, then I will take care of them, but if I'm not gonna go out of my way to do it.
Okay. That's interesting. Um, what I want to talk about now is personal growth, how you've grown. Um, I there's a stage in life that I like to call aging 360, where the roles that we are in from childhood to where we are as adults changes. So whereas your mother is the protector, she's the provider, she's the guardian, and now you are. How where are you right now with that role? Are you in that where are you in that aging 360 state with your mom?
I am definitely in that state now where I am. In 2021, my mom had a both of my parents had real serious health issues that happened like simultaneously right after the other. My mother fell, broke her wrist, and she had surgery and had a cast on for 2 or 3 months. And then she came back and fell and broke her ribs. And a week later, my dad was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease, all at the same time.
That's a
And
rough month.
it was a rough 6 months. And going there, because when you work in healthcare, you understand how healthcare is supposed to be because you train it, you teach it. You can lend your experience and expertise to what's going on. So that's what I did, and I think for the first time, that was my first time going home and staying as an adult for an extended period of time, because
Mm,
I was going back and forth every 2 weeks. My older sister would go, and then we would rotate, and I would go for 6 months.
that's intense.
And I literally took care of them. I was their healthcare advocate proxy. I took care of them, and I was working 2 jobs. I was training by day and then being an on base analyst at night, indexing documents at night. And they saw me in a different light. Before, it was like, oh, don't bother her. She's the baby. I've always been the baby of the family, right? So they don't ever ask me for advice about anything because I don't know anything because I'm the
Oh my
youngest,
God.
right? That's just the hierarchy of family. And I say I grew up, I had 5 parents, my parents and my older siblings. Um, and so during that time, my siblings recognized that that was my wheelhouse,
Mm,
and they had to like yield to me
fall back.
because
Yeah.
they understood that although I'm the youngest, I'm the one with the most knowledge when it comes to what's going on with our parents. And so I got a different level of respect from most of my siblings, except maybe my one of my sisters. And then my parents are now looking at me in a different light, like she might know a little something. She might know a little something. So definitely it has switched. And then some days it just depends. It depends on how the wind blows. If they decide that they want to uh adhere to that, now, because they're still going through some health challenges.
So let me ask you this, Lola. Sorry to cut you off. Do you feel like Lola the adult when you're advocating and when you guys are there, or do you feel like Lola still the little girl part time? And does this apply to, I don't know, Katrina, with your mom? Do you have this scenario? I know Vanessa said your mom passed, but
No, I feel like Lola the adult. Sometimes I feel like they don't see me as Lola the adult
mm,
until it's convenient for the
interesting.
scenario,
Interesting.
right?
Katrina?
Um, when it comes to healthcare, I'm the adult. When it comes to everything else, I'm the baby.
Oh, that's deep.
So the dynamic is very frustrating most times because it's just
It's kind of
like
like off and on.
I'm still the same person, right? I'm still the 51-year. Like I'm like, y'all do realize I'm the only one that's been married and divorced and has a child.
Oh,
Like I've had experiences that none of my siblings have had. Like I have a sister that's never been married. She doesn't have any kids. I
uh-huh.
have another sister who has been married, has been divorced. She doesn't have any kids. And I have a brother who's been married but never divorced, but he has a son.
Oh,
And I've experienced it all and lived away for 20 plus years. And my siblings, for the most part, haven't. They've lived in besides my oldest sister. I mean, they've all lived in different states, but they came back to North Carolina.
oh wow.
I've been gone for 26 years, so I've lived very differently than how they've lived. My
Different
experience
life
has been
choices.
completely different. So I just think that, they just see me as my dad even says when he dreams about us, he dreams about us as children. He never dreams about us as adults,
That's
which is
crazy.
very telling because they say in therapy, if you do dream about your kids as children, that's how you see them.
Oh,
Yeah. And so when I told my daddy that, he was just like, "Well, yeah, you definitely are gonna you are my child. Like I see you as my child. I don't He doesn't really see me as an adult."
that's very interesting.
Yeah. Yeah.
Katrina, what about you?
Um, I think that I definitely am an adult in probably everybody's eyes, but my oldest sister. And I think she don't. I'll probably always be, you know, a baby to her in so many ways. But she is the one who primarily, is in my mama's face all the time. And I think it's interesting because the way that I see their relationship is interesting. She and her mom is already like feeble and falling apart. And so she's, kind of overly, I think, protective in a way that's smothering. And I tend to be more like the relief for my mom and the person who can interject and say, she still got her faculties, She's like, yeah, but she fell in the airport. I'm like, yeah, well, because as we get older, I feel like I'm
You
having
can't run for the
because
plane
as
like
we
you
get
used to.
older, what happens, but, I feel like my sister is already like, so they butt heads a lot, but they also spend the most time together. And like Lola said, I'm the one who's been married, divorced, remarried, got kids, got a blended family. I've had all the experiences. I was the baby, but the first to graduate from college, the first to get a master's degree, the first, so I have a lot more collective experience than my family, but it's not, I don't think that I'm being treated like a child. I think it's more the responsibility that my sister feels is hers as the oldest. And I don't interfere. I'm just like, hey, I'm here if you need me, you know? But I wanted to tell you guys I have to run. So I've really been enjoying having this conversation with you guys. I wish I could keep going. Vanessa, didn't even realize how much I miss you, lady, till I saw your face. So
Love
thank you,
you.
Karen, for bringing us together. I'll see you soon, Lola. Mwah, mwah, mwah. Bye, ladies.
Love
All
you.
right.
Bye.
Bye
Bye
bye.
bye.
Well, the last one, she left before I was able to ask one of the last questions of what values or traditions from your mother do you hope to pass on to your own children or future generations?
Mm. guess traditions. My mother was always a family person, and so on any type of occasion, she would always try to get people together. Um, and so I've tried to establish every fourth Sunday of the month we have like a soul food uh,
Ah,
time together, soul food Sunday, and we kind of rotate through everybody's house. Um, and I can do that more now since I've been home, doing the holiday thing and just celebrating family.
okay.
And my mother, um, her main thing was just to treat everybody kind. You know,
Mm-hmm.
you reap what you sow,
Yep.
and if you're kind to other people, they'll be kind to you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is true. This is true.
Mhm.
Lola, how about you?
My mom's a big holiday person. She's going to decorate and go all out for holidays. And so if there was any tradition like Vanessa, it would be about getting together with family,
Mhm.
you know, passing that on. Me and my daughter had this thing where when she was a little girl, we had t-shirt and panty night. So
Ah,
every Friday, we don't do it as much as often as we do now because she's 22 and she has a life, you know. But we
how
do get
dare her?
together, huh?
How dare she?
How dare she, right? But we do like have our own little tradition of when we get together, we cook, and well, she lives with me, but we cook and we sit down, or like our tradition is drinking matcha in the morning and sitting down and like girlfriends, and we just talk and kind of go over what's going on, what she's thinking about, what I'm thinking about,
Oh,
just current events, stuff like that. So I want to keep that tradition with her, and just the tradition of holidays, spending them together, cooking and having people over, and
do you think that's something that Lauren will pass on, or will try to maintain with her own daughter?
I hope so. Yes,
Mm,
Mm.
yes,
that would be
yeah,
that would be amazing if it's like
yeah,
matcha Mondays or matcha Sundays.
yeah.
Well, ladies, I want to thank you so much. This was really a great conversation.
Yes.
I hope we planted some seeds for people in terms of how you're evolving and growing, and how we just kind of come full circle, with our moms. Because I know for me, uh, um, it became a thing of moving from, you know, that little girl to that woman, and the how to not be my mom but still pull out the best parts of her.
Mhm,
So
mhm.
that's kind of one of the reasons why I wanted to kind of have this conversation with you guys. I thank you for your time. I thank you for being here on this rainy Monday, Memorial Day. And I appreciate you. And I hope you guys have a great rest of the evening. And if you're having ribs or chicken or steak or lobster or whatever, enjoy it. Have a good salad behind that, and don't eat too late. Okay.
Uh, well, it's already too late.
This is true. It depends on when you go to bed. Now, if you're gonna
Right.
be
Yeah,
up way,
yeah.
but yeah, it is kind of late. All right. Let
All
me
right.
see
Well,
what I got going on over here. Next month, we'll be back on the last Monday in June.
The last.
And I think we may be doing something a little different. Not really quite sure, but we'll tap in and let you guys know. Thanks so much for joining the conversation. This is Wink, Blink, and Flirt, and this is Girl Bye.
all right. Thank you for having.
Bye.
Bye bye, Lola. It's good meeting you.